Do you need an agenda? Do you want an agenda?
Sure.
Pretty much everybody.
There you go. Thank you.
Well, we all set to go. There's a few more people coming in from down at the potluck, but why don't we go ahead and get started so we can kind of stay on time here. Start things off. I'd like to ask Pastor Joe to come up and lead us in an opening prayer.
Let us pray. In coming together, we are grateful, O God, for offering us discipleship as stewards of your grace. As we witness the passing of the seasons, give us wisdom to see the limits of our own lives and to move with the freshness of your Spirit, which makes all things new. Remind us each day that you don't call the equipped, but you equip us for the tasks that you appoint us. Trusting your promise, we give ourselves into your hands. Use us as you will for the good of this church and for the spread of the kingdom. Enkindle in us the vision that harmonizes our lives and our plans with yours. In Jesus' name we ask, amen.
Thank you, Joseph. Welcome, everyone, to our informational meeting. Just a little detail, I guess, is that this is just an informational meeting. The actual group, our church conference that will be coming up, it's going to be on November 10th, which is next Sunday, November 10th at St. Mark's. It starts at 2 o'clock. I'm sorry?
2 weeks.
It is 2 weeks? Isn't this 10th next, though? Okay. I hadn't had enough figures. Okay, 2 weeks. But it is the 10th of November, 2 o'clock, down at St. Paul's. And so this meeting is started, we started this meeting a few years ago, where many years ago when we had our church conference, this district superintendent would come in and we'd meet with them one-on-one and go over all the business and all the plans and go through all the everything that needed to be approved and all that good stuff. But we'd be one-on-one. And those worked out pretty well. But then as the church started changing, the conference changes and stuff like that, well, our district superintendent now, Nancy Tomlinson, has nearly 70 churches that she's got to oversee in her district. And so she combines that into one large meeting, and that's, like I say, that'll be on the 10th. And so it'll be, like I said, it's, on the 10th at 11, on the 10th at 2 o'clock at St. Paul's, and everyone's invited. And so so today, though, this meeting came out of the fact that we don't get together one-on-one. And so today what we're doing is going through the booklet that hopefully you all got a copy of. Go through the booklet and give a little bit more detail and answer any questions you might have. And so it works out pretty nicely. So hopefully that's a little bit of a background of what we're working with now. Again, welcome to our meeting, and we're glad you came. At our last church council meeting last week, Steve Schaefer shared so organized I can't find anything. He shared with us a devotion, And it kind of deals, I thought it really dealt well with the situation we're dealing with here at Aldersgate now. So I'm going to read what he shared with the council, and I think it ties it very nicely to what we're talking about. And it's about the rich man and the problem he has of being able to have salvation. He has to get rid of everything and give it to the poor and the needy and stuff like that. And so that's the background to it. And it says, when he heard this, he was shocked and went away grieving, for he had many possessions. You know, and here's the story. I've heard so many sermons and lessons based on this story of the rich man. But what struck me this time in reading the story is that the man is solely focused on what he has to give up. By fixating on what he has to lose, the man misses out on what he could gain. It's a natural response when at the crossroads of an uncertain written future and the status quo, it's easier to settle for the things we are familiar with than take a leap of faith. Instead of leaning into what could be, we resign to what is. Jesus is pushing this man to see what could be, inviting him to see what he could and would gain. But the man is blinded by what is. When we're invited to follow Jesus to step into an unwritten future, it's a risky invitation. When you find yourself at these crossroads, I hope your sights are set not solely on what you could lose, but also on the abundance you're invited to step into. Sure, we don't know what the future holds, but we do know who holds it. So, and moving forward, moving forward is might help us lean into what could be. So, okay, at this time, I'd like to have Steve Schaefer come forward and Mr. Gardens himself and for the presentation. Steve?
Thank you, Bill. My name is Steve Schaefer. I'm chair of the Board of Trustees, and through that position became the chief instigator of Aldersgate Gardens. In March of this year, we achieved certification as a arboretum, as a full-blown arboretum by the Nebraska statewide arboretum. This matters because Aldersgate Gardens is now a part of a statewide network of arboretums and botanical gardens that foster knowledge and appreciation of plants and excellence in landscaping. Aldersgate Gardens is one of 30 arboretums in Nebraska. We now share company with places like Pioneers Park Nature Center in Lincoln and Lauritsen Gardens in Omaha. The significance of this is that Aldersgate Gardens has become an important mission of the church. It benefits the environment and serves the community. And I believe that we're the only church in Nebraska, perhaps the nation, that has an arboretum associated with it. So today we're going to be recognized and have our certificate presented to us. But before we get to that, I want to go through a few slides and provide a short history, especially for those who may not be familiar. So Nancy, advance one. So that's an aerial photo of what our grounds looked like before we started with the major landscaping. And we had some mature trees, really quite a few mature trees that were planted when the church was first built, but large areas of grass. We had a small playground, but it was getting pretty old and substandard. But it's a great location because on 3 sides was public streets and sidewalks, really easy access. And so our vision was to turn this into a neighborhood park. Next slide. And that began several years of work. And as of this last fall, this current fall, We've planted 135 trees, nearly 860 shrubs, 3,500 perennials, and quite a few grass plugs. Constructed a new playground, installed a lot of paths. The number I'm most proud of is the last one. We've reduced the traditional lawn space by just about 80%, from 90,000 square feet to 19,000 square feet. And those numbers are increasing every year. Except for the initial planting in 2017, grants and a few donations have covered all costs. It's just the match of the initial grant that we tapped our Board of Trustees monies. The next slide will just show a few pictures for the playground that went into 2019. The sandbox is a favorite of children. It's fun to see how the toys get reconfigured from day to day. It took 5 tons of sand to fill that initially, and I think last year we brought in another 1.5 tons to top it off, and it's probably down another ton. So I'm not sure where the sand disappears to, but I hope it means that someone's having a good time. Next slide. Our original vision was to create an intensively landscaped park with an abundance of plants for wildlife and a nature-based playground for children. We've achieved that vision. It's all in place. And so one should always have a vision, and the vision needs to be something that causes you to stretch. So we're toying with this expanded vision. So try this on and see if that is something that we can work towards. The expanded vision has become a destination that is valuable to the whole city to experience nature, see a wide variety of native plants, and learn about sustainable landscaping. And achieving Arboretum status is the first step towards this expanded vision. In addition to the recognition it provides, being an Arboretum will help us to improve. And then the last slide. Hannah Pineo, who's the Executive Director of the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum, is here today. She's going to present us with our certificate and our sign that we can display. But I first want to offer my deep appreciation to the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum. They have given us several grants, many thousands of dollars, that have helped pay for the trees and the bushes we've planted. They've given us lots of technical assistance and encouragement at every step of the way. We would not have accomplished any of this without Nebraska Statewide Arboretum, because it was their seminar that got us started. It was the fall of 2016. Board of Trustees was struggling. We had a little bit of money, and we had some proposals to do some traditional foundation plantings. None of them really were exciting. And about that time, we read about a seminar that Statewide Arboretum was going to put on called Sustainable Landscaping. Didn't quite know what sustainable meant, but we went to it and learned some great ideas, and also learned that there were grants available. And so it was that experience that got us started. So I'd like to welcome Hannah Pineo for the presentation.
Well, yes, I'm Hannah Pineo. I'm the Executive Director of the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum, and I want to congratulate all of you on this momentous occasion. Like he said, you're one of 30 Arboretum sites in the state. You are the only at a church that I know of, and you are actually moving up a level. So there you go, because you started as a landscape steward site, so that's a different affiliation that we have. So we actually have more than 100 sites throughout the state, whether that's a landscape steward or an arboretum, but you are in an exclusive group here, and we're so happy to have you. We've been working with Steve for many, many years to help make this beautiful site come to fruition, and I just want to applaud you all on the hard work that has been put in and the dedication. Lots of people would, get started and then give up part of the way through, but you all pushed through and have a lot to show for that. So I'm very impressed, and I think that you all can be a example for other faith communities, not only in the city but in the state, of what you can do with the land that you're given, and show your values and what you believe needs to be done. So thank you all for joining us, and I'll present to you your certificate and your new sign.
Thank you very much.
Steve, let's see the whole sign.
Pardon?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Cool. All right.
Thank you, Steve, for all your work.
Yeah, let's give Steve a hand for all that he's done. Well, I'd like to take just a minute to talk a little bit about kind of the state of the church right now. And in my mind, we have a lot of great things going. And I could go through just a few of them. Of course, we just got done talking about Aldersgate Gardens and what Steve's accomplished there and we've accomplished there. And so that's certainly something we're all so proud of. We also, something that I want to mention is that congregation growth as last year they grew with 14 new members. They had one baptism. That's always a good sign. And also we started this year with a family ministry. Colleen Nielsen is heading that up, and has really done a terrific job. They had a really great party at their house like last weekend or weekend before or something. And boy, I heard about it, and I certainly wish I was younger so I could go to that. It's good. But anyway, there were 30 attendees at that, and 18 of them were children. And then the Sunday school class here for the children here at Aldersgate. I don't know if you had a chance, but if you haven't seen the room right next door over here, Tom Shar Hayar and Harry and Sheila Kellenberger, I'll tell you that just walking in that room just makes you feel good, and it shows that it's got to be a fun time and a great place for kids to go. So we certainly indebted to Tom Shar, Harry, and Sheila for that. Vacation Bible School last summer, Carol Clymer headed that up, and there were 13 kids, but 32 adults that showed up for that, and that was also a wonderful, wonderful thing. Carrie Beckenar and in the Earth Stewards, that we continue our follow-up on climate change issues and things like that, and it's something that's really good to have going forward, and we thank Carrie for that work. United Women in Faith is a very, very strong organization that Sheila Kellenberger and Nelda Boswell head up this year, and it's a strong, strong group, and they do so much for this church, and so we really appreciate that. And then why I love Aldersgate presentations that Jim has started. I think everyone has heard those, really appreciative of those. And it, again, makes you feel good about being a member of Aldersgate family. And there's others, but there's just some other small groups I would mention is the Stitcheroos, Book Club, Men's Breakfast, Care Ministry, Friday Fling, and there are others too. But those are some things that's happening here at Aldersgate which make it such a great church to be part of. And again, it emphasizes that the fact that we truly are a family. And it's something to be very proud of. Okay, going next, I'd like to talk a little bit about, have Steve come back up and talk a little about the financial situation and explain that to us. Steve?
Well, now I'm up as my role as chair of the Finance Committee, and I have to admit, this one is not as much fun as the other hat I wear. So first I want to thank everyone who has turned in their estimate of giving card. If you haven't, it's never too late. If you read the weekly Around Aldersgate, you should be aware that our finances are in the red this year. Although September's income exceeded expenditures, and we're hoping that October will be a good month as well. After we close the books on October, the Finance Committee and Church Council will decide whether we need a special fundraising campaign to end the year, in order to end the year with a positive balance in the general operating fund. In your booklet is a copy of the budget for 2025. It's basically a continuation of the budgets of the past several years. There's nothing new in it except cost of living increases for staff and a large increase for building insurance. What we have budgeted for 2025, I think, is about $3,000 more than what we actually spent in 2023. And I expect that we'll be getting an additional premium increase, so what we have budgeted for 2025 will probably be less than what will actually be billed. We've searched for other insurance options, but the message we got is, be happy you have insurance. And so we're staying with our current carrier, looking at ways we might reduce the premium, but not too hopeful in that regard. The budget in the report shows both the line item details for people who really like numbers like me. It also shows the budget as a pie chart, showing what we spend on different programs. Administration, most important are those that accomplish things, our worship and education. And I think that's valuable. It reminds us that we're not just donating money in our offerings for utilities and things like that. The money is going in order for us to accomplish our mission as a church. And that's something we always need to keep in mind, even when we're dealing with numbers and finance. Another thing I want to point out is the important role that income from endowments is playing for the church. For 2025, the income from several endowments is covering 6% of our operating expenditures. In addition, one of the endowments is focused on building improvements and maintenance. And that is the largest source of money that we have in order to accomplish larger projects. So I think later we'll be hearing about the role of the Lasting Legacy team, and just want to underscore the importance that has to us as a church now, and if we can get some growth in those endowments, it can be extremely important to our future. So that's just a very quick highlight of what's in the budget. If there are any questions, please let me know. Contact me by phone or email, or grab me after this meeting or after church, and I'll try to answer your questions. Any questions now? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, I'd like to call Rod Moore up. He was the leader of the ad hoc committee that we established to look at the simplified board simplified board, I always had trouble with this, simplified board structure. There we go. So, Rod?
So I have, excuse me, I have a few notes just to help me keep things straight. But the church conference booklet, pages 7 through 10, talk in more detail, but I'm just going to skim over real quick. The church council asked a committee or a team to look into ways we might be able to reduce the number of hours spent on committee work and to free people's time and energy up to do more projects and things that the church as a body wants to do. How do we want to minister to each other? How do we want to reach out and minister to the community around us and even out to the larger world? So Bill Nelson, Kathy Dombrowski, myself, Larry Ruth, Carol Clymer, Steve Schaefer, Pastor Joseph, and Stacy Linneman have had meetings that started in the spring, and we've looked at this book, which I believe our district superintendent brought to our attention, and it's called Mission Possible, a Simple Structure for Mission Effectiveness for the Local Congregation. And as we looked through this book, it gave us some information and ideas about how we might reduce the number of people and hours just on committee work or teamwork and focus more on planning, not just for a month ahead or 3 months ahead or 6 months ahead, maybe even 8 or 9 months ahead or a year ahead. So we have some priorities to work towards. And so we'd be able to do it without a full-blown traditional Methodist church board structure or church committee structure, which really is designed for churches where you have 200 or 300 people in worship on a Sunday morning. You have some people that, because of their position, have to go to 3 or 4 other committee meetings. And we're trying to streamline that a little bit, just to free up some time and energy for things that we want to do. The Book of Discipline says, the purpose of the church council includes to provide for planning and implementing a program of nurture for the congregation, outreach, witness, and for implementing resources in the local church. So if you're working on a project as part of a team or you come up with a great idea and we say, yes, we want to support that, the church council will work to have enough people to help you and enough funding if we need that, so we can do that, whether it's Bible school or some other project or Earth Stewards, whatever. The church council exists to create and supervise a plan for an effective congregation. So I would just remind you, our church council meetings have always been open to anyone who wants to come and attend. The council has always been willing to have congregational involvement in their meetings. The church council has always worked in collaboration with the pastor and the committee members and people that bring forth ideas or questions, and to make decisions about, okay, we can do this or we can't do this. So in working with this book and trying to come up with a more simplified structure, we're trying to free up people's time and energy to do mission and projects within the church and to the community. It doesn't change the purpose of church council. We've just tried to find a way to make it less cumbersome, streamline it. And going forward, we can publicize ahead of time agenda items for church council. You can probably read about it in the about Aldersgate. You can know ahead of time what topics are going to be on the agenda. If that's something you want to come and talk with the council about, you can certainly do that. And as we work towards this simplified structure, we don't really have it 100% ready to go at this point, but we're working towards it. The council will be continue to be open to ideas and comments and questions. And we fully expect that in trying to change some things, we may run into some unforeseen issues or something isn't working as well as we thought it would. And we'll be open to changing that. We want this to succeed so that we as a congregation have time and energy and resources to do what we truly need to do, not only to survive, but to thrive. Larry Ruth is going to talk in a little bit about all the development going on just across that street right over there, all the houses going in, apartments going in, all the people that are going to be moving into that area. What's a close church to them? Right here, folks. That's us. And we want to be ready to take advantage of our opportunities, and this is one part of an effort to try to work towards that. So if you have any questions or comments right this moment, go ahead and ask. Otherwise, you can always contact someone on church council or someone on this committee. Anybody? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rod. One of the things that will happen at the church conference in 2 weeks at St. Paul's is that we have to have approval on nominations. We also had to have approval on pastor's salary. And I think we also have, there's a form for personnel that we have to have approved too. And it's just, it's an aggregate vote for all the churches. But the thing is, we don't need to approve anything today, but we do need to we want to go over the nominations for next year's officers and so forth. So at this time, I had asked that Pastor Joe and Kathy Dombrowski to come up and share their thoughts with us.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Kathy and I are here on behalf of the nominations team. The other two nomination members are Reba Waisaki. She couldn't come because of her previous engagement, and Pat Ruth. Pat Ruth is here, yes. 4 of us are the team of nominations team. Before we report on the process we followed in nominations this year, thank you again, Rod, for presenting us, and I call it the blueprint of the simplified board structure. Blueprint because we can make changes whenever needed, which is a good idea. Always be open to changes. The report on nominations can be found on pages, some committees, teams are on page 6 and 7, and some the officers or church council and other administration teams are on page 9 and 10. As you note on page 9, it is listed, at the top of the page is listed proposed church officers and committees for 2025. This year, in view of the simplified board structure, nominations have been different. Note the difference there, and I'll go over it with you a little. What the nominations team has done is nominate the chairs and key positions only, which are marked with an asterisk. These positions will be elected at the church conference, so next 2 weeks' time. Teams such as learning, fellowshipping, which is also serving, and worship planning teams select their own representatives to sit on the church council. At the bottom of the list, you will see those 3 also named there. They will have their own representative elected, and we will add them to the council then. The leadership will then have their team and or a pool of representatives. So these teams, learning, education, worship planning team will have their representatives that will sit, and they will have their own teams of volunteers, pool of volunteers that they will work with. Which is, those volunteers team is on page 6 and 7. Well, I always keep in mind, when we say they are volunteers and we are not, no. Most of us, all officers, are volunteers. And we thank each one for volunteering their time and talent and energy. Thank you. Yes. The positions that are not elected or nominated, some on page 6 and 7, they are volunteers as I said in strict sense. But if you don't find yourself, probably what I see here is I think most of you are involved. And I'm also thinking of those who are not here. Get them this word on behalf of the nomination team, and if I can say even the church council. If they find any time that they want, hey, their name is not there in the volunteers or anywhere they would like to serve, we would love to have them on any of our teams. In the end, on behalf of the nominations team and the whole congregation, I would like to thank all those who have served and continue to serve God through this church. That's my report on the process and the nominations. And maybe Kathy has something to add, we'd love to have. And if after that, if you have any questions, please raise them.
Okay, I'm going to talk about why the asterisks on some names. The book, well, in meeting with the district superintendent, it became clear we weren't going to have a whole simplified board structure done by the end of this calendar year. And she encouraged us, take your time, this is not something to rush. And in terms of nominations, the Book of Discipline requires certain positions to be approved by church conference, but not all positions. The positions basically that deal with staffing issues, financial issues, and issues about the building need to be approved by the conference, or by the church conference. We also have to have at least 9 people on that church conference. So our emphasis was to fill those positions, which we did. That does not mean that the key result teams or the other positions are not as important. What it does mean is that they do not require church conference approval. And in fact, what our DS told us is that those should be very nimble teams that can be adjusted as needed. If you're doing a special project and you need many people on worship, fine. If you only need a few, that's fine. That can change throughout the year. So that is why we did that. So we will be working with those teams, and that will continue to be a priority. And those teams, I think, are what really drive the church and are probably more important than some of the administrative teams. So we didn't want anybody to think, oh, learning's not important, because it's very important. Some questions have come up about how does this work next year with groups that have already been on church conference. And basically, we start out January with essentially the same structure. And as we move forward in our simplified board process with consultation and review with church council, then we'll figure out the best way to do that. We haven't got it all figured out yet. Suggestions are welcome. Prayers are especially welcome. And again, I want to emphasize what Pastor Joe said. If you want to serve on a key result team or a committee or any of these activities, please let Pastor Joe or one of those of us on nominations committee know. You may have been asked and you said, oh, I can't do this year, but maybe circumstances have changed, and volunteers are the heart of this church. Thank you.
Amen. Any questions you may have? Yes.
Who's going to be our lay representative in conference? Do we know that?
Ta-da.
No, and that, in fact, the DS said that does not have to actually be approved, but we do not have that filled. If you have suggestions, please let us know.
Well, I can't, but
I know that you can't because you're clergy, but, yeah, that position is not filled.
Good question. If not, thank you much. Again, each person that is part of our community, a part of Aldersgate, even friends of our church are vital to us. And we couldn't do without them and us. Amen.
Thank you, Thank you, Joseph and Kathy. Next on the agenda is Doug Wysocki will come up and tell us a little bit more about the lasting legacy. Doug?
I have enough gray hairs, I need some notes. I'm the chair of the Lasting Legacy Committee, and when we say lasting legacy, the first thing that probably comes to your mind is money. But I don't think that is a true representation of what legacy is. And I'll read something that I just kind of put together. A legacy includes the values, the hopes, the experiences, and the assets that outlast us and which inspire the generations that will come after us. And when you think about it, legacies could be negative or they could be positive. And of course, ours is positive. Legacy would include then what we would now call the Aldersgate Arboretum. That is a legacy that this church has. So how do we build those? Well, this committee was created with two charges. One was to oversee the funds that reside in the Nebraska, I always get tripped on this one, but it's Nebraska United Methodist Foundation. And part of that charge is to us is encourage and facilitate contributions to those long-term funds. And that's, to me, is a key word, long-term. Steve mentioned that some of these funds are now supporting our annual budget. But that's not the goal of these funds. We're building a future for the people that come after us. And the magic of compound interest will help build those funds. We oversee, and Steve mentioned this, there are 5 funds, and they're outlined starting on page 23 of the handout. There are endowment funds that have come from members of this congregation that we don't have the presence of, but they live in our hearts. So that's part of the legacy. And the other funds have come mainly from the sale of the lots and other contributions. And then lastly, there are 2 goals that we have. One is to remind everybody of what legacy is and the value of legacy. And the other thing is and when we thought about this, how do you do that? So 2025, there is what I'll call the Legacy Planning Series. And this is a number of presentations starting the first Tuesday of January and continuing the first Tuesday of every month until June. So if I count right, that's 6 presentations. And these will address various aspects of legacy planning. It might be estate building. It may be other things that relate to building a legacy in your life. And this is mainly, or totally, in a sense, for people who are members of the congregation. You know, if you have a dear friend that you think, well, this would really be helpful for them, yeah, you can invite them. So put that on your calendar. First Tuesday of every month, starting in January through June. And when you see the list of speakers, you will probably know some of them, and then you'll understand the content, because there will be a title to what they give. It's not quite in place right now, so I hate to give something out that doesn't fall into place right now, but it will come out shortly, certainly before maybe December, and lastly before January. So that's something for you to look forward to and think about for building our legacy.
Well, thank you, Doug. Rod, when his presentation referenced Larry Ruth's going to kind of sew things up for us now and talk a little bit more about the growth that we see in our neighborhood. So, Larry?
Good afternoon. Going to talk a little bit about the eastward growth here in Lincoln. And I'll make the momentous statement that we are all profoundly affected by our surroundings. That seems to be something that we take for granted, but Aldersgate United Methodist Church is profoundly affected by its surroundings in this regard. But the growth we have going on just to the east of 84th Street has an obvious effect on us and a profound effect on our aspirational thinkings that we should be doing. Just give you a little background. Pat and I came from right out of the Navy in 1974, and we landed here at 84th and Pioneers. At that time, the north field across the street was Milo. The northeast corner, where St. Paul's now stands, was a wheat field.
St. Mark's.
Pardon me?
St. Mark's.
St. Mark's. What did I say?
St. Paul's.
St. Paul's. And then to our south and east was a soybean field. It's kind of reflective of where I'm from. I'm from the farm, so I associate things that I know with what they used to grow, I guess. But we decided to join Aldersgate because we liked what we found here. And that was a new location, but kind of an old church with much history. At that time, Lincoln East High School was really close to the east boundary as we would know it. This is 50 years ago. And Gateway was probably considered a gateway by name because it was sort of considered to be the gateway to the city. Now, what do you think of that? Well, the city planners had other ideas about growing to the east. That's one of the things that I guess attracted many of us here at that time, was the idea that we were going to be growing and we were going to grow to the east. The east boundary, in effect, was 84th Street at that time, and the city planners decided that it was too expensive to grow straight to the east for the city, and that was because of some very expensive infrastructure that needed to be built, and that was dealing with the wastewater. They also came up with an idea that I think was probably pretty common at that time, and it was probably a good idea, and that is that a city should grow concentrically, that you can keep down the cost of the infrastructure if you start from the middle and grow out equally. So that accounted for why 84th Street east of here was put on the back burner. They eventually decided to allow for growth to the east, but Aldersgate had moved to the location where one half of our direction, meaning to the west, was going to have delayed development. And so we've always had that as a challenge. Some churches have done better than we have in meeting that challenge, and for various reasons. But then we had, of course, new growth, new high schools around the city. New retail locations, you think of where retail is now on 84th Street, it's from O Street north for several miles, or south 84th Street down to Highway 2. Now, what I'd like to ask is someone, namely our videographer, to throw up a slide. This is going to be a slide of what was decided in 2018 as the planned future growth for the city of Lincoln. And it's a little bit dated, but it is very adequate as far as demonstrating what in that particular time, 2019, 2018, the city had decided was going to be the pathway for future growth, residential growth in the city. And incidentally, the city limits go the same place as where the school limits are for the Lincoln Public Schools. The city limits are also, once you are inside the city limits, the city has a responsibility to provide you with certain services. So they're not going to let you in the city until they can build out for those services. Let's look at this for a second. I like to call it the big bulge. 84th Street is going north and south, clear over on the left-hand side. The next section over is where Aldersgate United Methodist Church is. I think you can, oops. Apparently not on this one. 84th and south, which is between Aldersgate O Street, pardon me, A Street, and get myself oriented here, and Pioneers. Van Dorn, yeah, I'm sorry. Now you can see, well, you still can't see it. So we're right down in what I call the big bulge, and this is where, with this location of gray area, you're going to be seeing significant growth allowed by the city planners. And it's certainly consistent with their idea of concentric growth. At that time, when they were looking at the land that was platted or planned to be platted, combine that with the potential for growth in that area, amounted to thousands of new houses. And that many in terms of people too. Well, much more than that, more like 20 to 25,000 in population. That's on our doorstep. It's within 5 minutes of our front door. Much of it is within 2 or 3 miles, actually. We have a lot of competition on 84th Street. In fact, sometimes it's called the city or the street of churches, or Church Street. And some of those are looking for providing of different services that we may, a different ministry. But what we have is the opportunity to work with the folks that are going to be moving in here and to meet our challenges, which have to do with numbers. We have a ministry here that I think is very good. We have grounds that are very good. We have a facility that's very good. And the question really is, do we have the heart and the commitment to grow to meet the need, to spread the word, spread the discipleship of the great commitment, of the great commission, and to do what we're meant to do here? I don't know what we're going to do in terms of things to be more attractive to people who are looking for a church home, but we know a lot of them are. And I think it really comes down to, are we doing what God wants us to do? And that is to minister to needs. We're not doing this for a show of power, as I think some churches do, or a show of extravagance, which I think some churches do. I think what many people are looking for when they go to visit a church is, what is their ministry? What kind of care do they show? What kind of education do they have for the youth? What kind of compassion do they have for the people going in the door? That's coming out very clearly as some of the statements that are being made on why people join the church. We have had an expanded vision, I noticed, with the previous certification of Aldersgate Garden. That expanded vision was to become a destination for sustainable landscaping, as I recall the comment. Well, we are expanding our vision with this budget, trying to stay within what we think we can raise. But we're looking forward to the things we can do with what we have and to work for the benefit of people that come in and to minister to their needs. That's all I have by way of showing you things, except that I do have some slides that take each one of these areas and help us to see what's already there. It's rather eye-opening. For example, in the area of the expansion, the gray part being expansion, there were 5 or 6 housing developments that were suggested in 2019. Those are well underway of being completed, if not completed. They concluded the Waterford area, Shadow Creek, White Horse, Wandering Creek, which is where Pat and I live nearby. And it is, I kind of had a funny feeling. If urbanization is now being defined in part or described in part of how many roundabouts you go through to and from where you live, then we are very much urbanized down on Van Dorn. Pat and I traveled 2 roundabouts coming in and 2 roundabouts going back home.
Supposed to be the safest intersection.
Well, I kind of like them myself. Anyway, that's not why I'm here to talk about roundabouts, but it's just to show you the magnitude of what we have. That, for example, is the new housing in the southeast, going from Aldersgate looking to the southeast. And that Van Dorn Street, 84th, it can be busy right now. And it will be more busy. Can you throw another couple of them up? Once again, this is looking at Aldersgate from the upper left-hand corner is a circle and looking east and south. Interestingly enough, St. Mark's first vision as to where they wanted to locate was immediately to the east of this church, across 84th Street. Keep on going. We might as well just slip through them real quick like. 84th Street, more development to the east. And I think that this is the one that has a picture of the, no, this is north and east, and then to the northeast. But we have these pictures that Steve was able to put together, and it's pretty demonstrative of what we have by way of folks that could be coming here. Thank you. Any questions? Steve, what were those, any revision on the populations estimates as to what's going to be coming in? Okay. Question? Yes.
Question, comment. You're showing all the, how much green space is going to be planned in that? We may have some advantage having an arboretum that's close by, because you want to go back to nature. You may not have close opportunities.
Right. Well, planning right now does require some green space and setbacks and so on. And they're pretty careful on doing that, but I think this would be the only park now in the area, if I'm not mistaken. Are there any parks in this area? I mean, real parks where people can come as a destination, and we don't have picnic tables, but we sure have walking trails. Thank you.
Well, before we adjourn, I'll just open it up for additional questions on anything that you might have heard today. I would also remind you, take the book home and look through it. There's a lot of information in there. And as you look at it, it may raise some questions and something like that. So be in touch with the presenters today or other people that's involved. And then also I want to renew tell you that, you know, November 10th, 2 weeks from now, down in St. Mark's is the formal church conference, and everyone is invited. And so if you're available, it usually takes like an hour, maybe a little bit more, but it's usually kind of interesting. And so let me, one more time, just open it up for anybody that might have any questions that they might have of what you heard today, or might have looked through the book and raised some questions. Yes, sir, Keith.
I don't have a question, but I do want to say there's growth going on north of this church as well. We have a big hole as United Methodists when we get up in the area where I live, in 70th and, well, south of Adams, when St. Mark's left. And now, if you go up there, take 84 and keep going, go across the old street, and then keep going just a little bit, all the new houses that have been built there. When we bought our house 30 years ago on 70th Street, there was nobody behind us. And within 2 years, there were 210 houses built. And that just keeps right on going. So I just want us to be aware that when we're thinking about our ministry, that we think about a wider area, because that's a hole up there.
Anybody else questions? Carrie, you have something?
Well, I'm going to be like Bartimaeus.
Want to come up here?
No? I know the list is long for a lot of different folks and what we're trying to get done, but I think there's an issue about safety. Safety when people are in this church that hasn't been talked about. It's been kind of brought up here and there, and I just wanted to bring it up today. When we had that July 31st storm that wiped out that manufacturing plant stuff, there was some discussion, meetings I was in, people said, well, you know, where should we go? We don't have a basement at church. So, I think that's one thing. I don't think it would be terribly difficult, but we need to know where people can go if we have a tornado siren go off. And we need to have those maps up somewhere that, or in a bulletin or whatever that's going to go in so people can know where to go. I wish Sheila was here, but Sheila was in a caregiver meeting that I was in, that Susie Campbell heads up, that caregivers group. And we had a medical doctor who was talking that day, and he brought up, he asked us where our AEDs were located, because he assumed that we had some. And that's a topic that's come up many times, many years ago. They were terribly expensive. Today they're not. I think we, especially because our fire station is not over here at 84th and South Street anymore. And we know Lincoln Fire and Rescue has a good response, but we don't know what the response is going to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And AEDs are much less expensive today. Sometimes there are grants available to acquire those. I've read, this is something I hate to even bring up, but there have been a lot of shootings in churches. And do we have an active shooter plan? If we have an active shooter come in, how do people get out? Where do they go? Do they hide? Do they run? What? How do we help people who are using walkers and so forth? It's not something we're going to advertise on our website. We don't want We know we have done a tremendous amount of work on Aldersgate Gardens. What I don't know about is if we have a fire start. I hate to even bring that up, but if I was a neighbor here, I was next to all these plants, I'd be a little bit concerned. I'd be coming to this church saying, you know, you guys have an extra fire hydrant or something, a water supply in this area, if something had come up. So, sorry to be like Bartimaeus, but I thought it was important to bring all these things up. Some of them have been brought up before, and some of them have been told to my face that they're not important. So I thought it was important to bring them up.
I think, Jerry?
Hold on a second. Shirley has something she wanted to
Okay, sure.
bring up.
Can you hold it up like that?
I've got the speakerphone on. Let's see if I can get it so that she can be heard. What? Here. She wants to talk to you. See if you can bring it up for her. Just put it up to your ear, because I've got it on
Okay,
speakerphone.
Shirley, you can hear us?
Well, I was just, I'm exercising my freedom from my seat here. But something that was not mentioned at all was, when was Messiah Lutheran opened? We talked about Aldersgate. We talk about the development, you know, up 84th. But Messiah Lutheran is across the street from us, and it's been there for a long time. But something that was not mentioned at all was, when was Messiah Lutheran opened? We talked about Aldersgate. We talk about the development, you know, up 84th. But Messiah Lutheran is across the street from us, and it's been there for a long time.
Do I?
It's picking up on what you see. She needs to move your PC or whatever she's listening to.
Shirley, just a second.
Shirley, you need to mute the device you're watching the live stream on because we're hearing it through your speakerphone.
Okay, let me see what. Nobody mentioned that, and it's a huge presence there. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be doing this, I guess.
You're good to go now, Shirley.
I think I did, but anyway, yeah. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this, I guess.
Go ahead, Shirley.
I think I did, but anyway. Yeah. Well, you know, nobody has mentioned Messiah, and it's been there for years. Go ahead, Shirley. I was just going to say Messiah has been there for years, and we haven't talked about it at all. You know, nobody has mentioned Messiah, and it's been there for years.
It's picking up her, she's listening to it at home. No, it's not working.
Shirley? 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 I think she hung up on us.
Yep.
Okay. I'll get in touch with her and have her, we'll write something out or whatever and make sure that is available to y'all. So, but back to Carrie's point, I think it's, you know, I think that's a good message. We gotta take it forward and find the best way, of handling it. And, you know, I appreciate her bringing it to the attention. She and I have talked about it before, and so we need to take care of it and address it at least. So, any other thoughts, questions, comments? Sure.
Since I was paying all the bills all these years, for many years, I'm just going through this report. And on page, toward the end, it's the letter from Great Plains United Methodist on conference mission shares. It shows like $24,492 or $28,166. Everybody with me so far?
It's not estimated in that. So it's
just from the back.
Yeah, it's after the.
So my question is, on the spreadsheet where you have budget, expenses for next year, it just shows mission shares is 10,000. I'm confused, one shows 10,000 and another page shows 28,000. Anybody?
So I got to admit, I didn't hear you well enough to understand the question very well.
You want me to answer the question?
If anybody can, I'm just
At the
curious.
back of the book is the page from the Great Plains Conference informing us what they want us to pay for mission shares.
Okay.
And the spreadsheet, which is the budget adopted by the church council, is the amount that we estimate that we'll pay based upon earmarked donations.
Okay.
We took mission shares out of the budget that we, a couple of years ago, and have not been optimistic enough that we'd have money flowing in to be able to pay our full share. I think eventually we hope to be able to pay the full share, but that's going to depend upon our ability to tap the growth that we see in East Lincoln.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Others? But please, Phil, make sure if you get into this and you have some questions yourselves, to make sure you follow up and ask somebody to make sure it's answered, because it's important. This is, we have a lot of good opportunities in front of us. We've got a good product to share here, both in facilities, the gardens, and the programs. And I'll tell you what, we got the best people. So it's we got a lot on the asset side. So if there's no more questions, one final time. Okay, I'd ask Pastor Joe to come up to lead us in a closing prayer.
You know, I was wishing that this prayer was on the screen so that we could say it together. But let's, as I read it, let's make it our own. We are grateful, O God, for the privilege to work as laborers in your vineyard. We have discussed some of the ways to do that. Bless what we have discussed, and in future, keep guiding us. As we depart from here, anchor us firmly to your side as we seek your will and way. Give us the clear vision and courage of heart to follow you in that same manner of prayer you have taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but to deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you all again for coming.